introduce our remote speaker for this morning. This time, I'm not quite so nervous about the presentation, though I maybe shouldn't press my luck here, but it's on DVD rather than live remote. I first met Deborah Bowen about a year and a half ago when she was starting her campaign for Secretary of State, and she spoke to a group of election integrity activists in Berkeley. We were very impressed by her detailed knowledge of the issues that she had first championed as a state legislator from Los Angeles. After 3 terms in the Assembly from 1992 through 1996, Bowen was elected to 2 terms in the state Senate from 1996 until 2006. As a legislator and then chair of the California Senate Committee on Elections, Reapportionment and Constitutional Amendments, Secretary Bowen authored a number of election-related laws designed to build public confidence in voting systems, including measures to require all election results to be randomly audited using paper records, to require all audits to be conducted in public, and to include absentee and early voter ballots in audits. That requirement for including absentee and early voting ballots is due to take effect in January, when Secretary Bowen will be administering the very law that she authored. Last November, when Bowen was elected Secretary of State, she became just the 6th woman elected to a statewide constitutional office in California history. But election reform hasn't been Secretary Bowen's only issue. A journalist friend recently filled me in because he had been following her for some time, that she's been a legislative leader for open government, personal privacy, environmental protection, and consumer rights throughout her career. Since she took office in January, Secretary Bowen has initiated a number of changes in how California's elections will be conducted, beginning with the presidential primary in early February. We've already heard about some of those changes and how they're putting California in the forefront of election integrity and election auditing developments. Although she didn't, her schedule didn't permit Secretary Bowen to join us in person today, she did make us a short video presentation to lead off this last day of our election auditing summit. What we didn't realize when she made this a couple of weeks ago was that the chief reason that Secretary Bowen nor her top staff were able to participate in this summit was that they were preparing to issue an important set of additional election requirements, which will now apply to the upcoming presidential primary and to other state and local elections the first week of February. Fittingly, she announced those requirements on Thursday night, just as this summit was starting. When we read Secretary Bowen's announcement yesterday, and there are copies of the auditing portion of that available on the table back there, unless they've all run out, in which case we'll need to make some more. It was gratifying to see a number of places where input from some of the people in this room clearly had improved the initial set of draft requirements she had circulated a few weeks ago for public comment. For example, we have been pleased to see that the draft procedures had required expanding the manual tally from 1% to 10% whenever the margin of a contest was less than 1%, a recommendation that her working group, which Philip Stark and Kim Alexander served on, had recommended. We wish that the escalation were something other than the fixed percent, but that was a minor quibble. However, there was a much more serious problem we noticed, in that the draft proposal, because California has been doing its manual audits completely on a county basis, called for escalating when the margin within the county differed by less than 1%, which clearly didn't make statistical sense. Fortunately, we were able to persuade our staff to change that, so the requirements issued yesterday say explicitly, and I quote, "In contests that include more than one jurisdiction, individual jurisdictions will look to the overall margin of victory in the contest based on the semifinal official canvass results, instead of the margin of victory only within the jurisdiction." Moreover, there are a number of explicit escalation and transparency requirements which sounded like they had been lifted almost directly from some of our presentations yesterday. I'd like to read just a couple of them. When variances between the semi-final official canvass results and the manual tally results are discovered, election officials must document and disclose those variances and take the following steps to resolve the variances. And there's a whole bunch, but I'll just read a couple of them. Variances found in the manual tally sample for a given contest must be presumed to exist in at least the same proportion in the remaining ballots cast in the contest. Sounds a little like Philip Stark to me. Additional precincts must be tallied in randomly selected blocks of 5% until the total number of variances presumed to exist, recalculated using the method above, is smaller than 10% of the overall margin of victory in that contest based on the semifinal official canvass results, or until all ballots have been manually tallied, whichever comes first. That's straight Philip Stark. Goes on to say that if any variance is found between manually tallied VVPAT records and corresponding electronic vote results that cannot be accounted for by some obvious mechanical problem, then the VVPAT records, memory cards, and devices and DRE machines must be preserved, and the Secretary of State must be notified in order to allow for an investigation to determine the cause of the problem. The also goes on to talk about transparency in a way that sounded a lot like Kim and Joe Hall, and I'll read just a couple of those. Election officials must ensure implementation of the following procedures to make the post-election manual tally process more transparent and effective. Precinct tally results must be made available to the public before the manual tally of those results begin. Election officials must begin the manual tally as soon as practicable after the random selection of precincts for the manual tally. Manual tally must be conducted in public view by hand without the use of electronic scanning equipment. Election officials shall keep a log to record the manual tally process, and the log must be made available to the public. Undervotes and overvotes must be tracked and reported as part of the manual tally process. People conducting the manual tally should not be told the corresponding electronic vote results in case a repeat tally is necessary. We're very proud of California's new Secretary of State. It's a real honor to be able to introduce her